Hello and welcome. I'm Jim with Working with Miniatures, and today we're going to be making cobblestone bases using methods. Let's get to it. To start, I use a Proxxon Thermocut 115E to cut thin strips from scrap XPS foam. The thickness should match the molded base that is part of the figure. You can just as easily make these cuts with a sharp X-Acto knife or utility knife, but since I have a hot wire cutter, I am using it. Over a cutting mat, I cut the foam strips into smaller segments before further bisecting them into even smaller pieces. Next, I trim the edges to somewhat round them. In this case, I'm going for a cobblestone look. Cobblestone is worked smooth stones that are very similar in size. If you want a flagstone look, you can spend less time rounding the foam and allow significantly more variance between the pieces. With a ball of rolled aluminum foil, I lightly roll it over what will be the top of the foam stones, giving them some slight texture. I'm careful not to overdo it or they'll lose all semblance of smoothness. With the stones finished, I use a pair of miniature cutters and begin cutting the molded base of the miniatures. My aim here is to make the segments match the size and shape of the foam rocks. Leaving parts of the base like this will give some more surface area for glue, so I should not need to drill holes in the feet and pin it to the base. With an X-Acto knife, I bevel the edges of the base segments to help them match the shape of the foam stones. Go slow during these steps, being doubly careful not to nick or cut the miniature, or more importantly, yourself. Next, I begin gluing the miniatures and foam stones to the base. If using superglue, don't get heavy-handed while attaching the stones, as superglue can melt XPS insulation foam. Be sure to leave at least a little bit of space between each stone and try to keep the distance between them uniform. Otherwise, it'll just look like random rocks versus a man-made cobblestone road. You may need to trim some of the stones, especially around the edges of the base, and fine-tipped tweezers are helpful for placing the stones. After allowing the glue to dry, I cover the top of the base with oak brown. You can avoid the stones to save paint, but you don't need to worry about getting paint on them or not, as they'll be painted separately next. For the cobblestones, I give them a base coat of dark stone. I like this gray color for the rocks as it has some brown in it and lends to the idea of a layer of dirt or dust having built up on them. I throw wash over the entire base, cobblestones and all, only mindful of keeping it off the miniature while assuring I get it around each stone. With a dry brush, I apply uniform gray to each cobblestone before finishing the cobblestones with the edge highlight of ash gray on the edges and highest points of the stones. With matte black, I black rim the base to give the rim a finished look and to cover any stray paint from previous steps. During editing, 3 clips were corrupted, which consisted of the steps for edge highlighting the stones, flocking the base, and applying a tuft. To flock, I used a cheap brush to apply PVA glue in the crevices between the cobblestones and then lightly sprinkled earth blend flock, allowing the glue to dry and then shaking off the excess. I apologize for not providing the footage, and unfortunately I had already deleted the files from the camera, so I have no backups to restore from. Since one of the miniatures is raking, I looked at my local craft stores and miniature shops for small foliage, which they did not have. I found dollhouse leaves online, but I wasn't able to really get the feel for the size and wanted something proportional to the miniatures. On Amazon, I found this leaf punch that comes with 2 sheets of colored paper. The only thing worth pointing out on its use is to turn it upside down and line the cut up as close to the previous cuts as possible, This will limit wasted paper. I dump the leaves into a small bowl and remove the smallest of the 3 sizes. Using the back of an X-Acto knife, I slightly bend the leaves, giving them a little shape so they aren't perfectly flat. Be mindful not to cut or jab yourself. I use a cheap brush to apply a little bit of PVA glue on the cobblestones, and then with tweezers I create a small pile near his feet. I then spread loose leaves around and under the rake. This is the final results. As for lessons learned, I'll make sure I keep backup copies of all files until after the video has been created and posted to prevent lost footage in the future. It's going to wrap it up for today. I hope you've learned something or were inspired to make your own bases. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below, and if you like the content of this video, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm Jim with Working with Miniatures. I'm truly grateful for your time, and I bid you a fond farewell. Until the next video.